Hello everybody and welcome to Native English with Chris. In today's lesson I'm going to teach you what a lot of you have been asking for. I'm going to go over all 12 tenses that are in English. I'm not going to go into deep detail into them because in the future I intend to make an individual video on many of the more difficult tenses. So this is going to be more of a brief, organised introduction into all 12 tenses so that you can see them in an easy to understand, organised way. So yes, there are 12 tenses in the English language. I know that's probably a lot more than you have in your language, but they're not as difficult as you might think. So there are 4 different categories of tenses, and the first category is the simple tenses. So we're going to start off with the past simple tense, and we form this tense with the subject plus the second form of the verb. For example, I did my homework last night. And we use the past simple tense to explain something that happened at a certain point in the past. And we use this tense for things that happened in finished time. So using time expressions like yesterday or last week or when I was a child or last summer. We don't use the past simple when we're talking about unfinished time like today or this week. For more information on the difference between finished time and unfinished time, please watch my video here on the difference between the past simple and the present perfect. So the most common way of using the past simple is when telling a story about the past, like yesterday I got up and I had breakfast and then I went to work and had a nice day. I'm sure you all know how to use the past simple well, so we'll move on now. And the next tense is the present simple tense. And the form of this tense is easy. It's just the subject plus the first form of the verb. For example, I do my homework every week. Something my students never ever say. And you have to be careful here because when the subject is in the third person singular, like he, she, or it, then you have to add an S to the end of the verb, like he does his homework every week, or she plays football every day. And we use the present simple tense to explain habits, things that happen regularly, or general truths or facts. For example, I go to the gym every week. This is a habit and it happens regularly. Or I live in Prague. This is a fact or a state or a general truth. Or English is fun. Again, a fact, maybe, or a general truth. Please don't use this tense to explain something that is happening right now. I often hear my students making the mistake of saying something like, I play football now, and they are playing football right now. This is not the correct tense for that. For that tense, you should use the present continuous. I am playing football now, but we will come on to that tense shortly. And the final tense in the simple category is the future simple. And the form of this is subject plus will plus the first form of the verb. For example, I will do my homework tomorrow. We use the future simple to describe what we think will happen, like a prediction, or to make an immediate decision right now, or to make an offer or a promise. For example, I think it will be sunny tomorrow, so I will come to the barbecue. Or if you want to make an offer, you can say, I will help you with that. And my students often ask me what tense is going to, because obviously we use going to describe the future as well. Going to is not technically a tense, it's just a phrase used to describe a future plan. So we use going to for future plans, like I am going to go to the mountains at the weekend. Whereas we use will to describe things that we think might happen or for a decision we make right now. Like if you're in a restaurant looking at the menu, you might say something like, I will have the steak. So just to review the simple tenses, we have the past simple, I did my homework yesterday, the present simple, I do my homework every day, and the future simple, I will do my homework tomorrow. And the next category of tenses are the continuous tenses. So again, we'll start with the past continuous, And the form of this is the subject plus was or were, and then verbing. For example, yesterday I was doing my homework for 2 hours. And we use this tense to describe a continuous activity that was happening at a certain point in the past. Like last night, I was dreaming about going to the moon. Don't ask me why. So there's always that certain point in the past, and you are explaining what was happening at that point. For example, if you had a party last week and you couldn't go to the party, and your friend calls you and asks you why, sorry I didn't go to the party, but I was looking after my children all night. So you have the past event, the party, and the continuous activity of looking after your children. And next in this category, we have the present continuous. And the form of this tense is subject plus verb be in the present and then verbing. For example, I am doing my homework right now. And we use this tense, as I already said, to describe something that is happening right now or something that is happening at this point in your life. For example, right now I am having fun teaching you. Or I could say, right now I am learning to speak Spanish. Now I'm not learning to speak Spanish right at this moment, but at this time in my life I am learning it, so it's okay to use the present continuous. Another use of this tense is to describe a future plan. So this is very similar to using going to. So if tonight you have a plan to play football, you can say, I am playing football at 7 p.m. tonight, and that is your plan. And it's exactly the same as saying, I am going to play football at 7 p.m. tonight. It's probably even more common to use the present continuous here because it's a little bit quicker and shorter to say. And most of us English people are a little bit lazy. And the last tense in this category is the future continuous. And the form of this tense is subject plus will plus be in the infinitive plus verbing. For example, I will be doing my homework tonight. And similar to the past continuous, we use this future continuous to express what will be happening at a certain point in the future. So we have this certain time, like tonight or tomorrow at 2 p.m. and then you want to express what will be happening at that time. So if your friend calls you and asks you to go out for a beer tonight, you might say, sorry, I can't go for a beer tonight because I will be doing my homework. I'm sure no one has ever said that before in the history of mankind. And just to review the continuous tenses, we have the past continuous, I was doing my homework yesterday. The present continuous, I am doing my homework right now. And the future continuous, I will be doing my homework at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Now we're going to move on to the perfect tenses. And firstly, in this category, we have the past perfect. And the form of this tense is the subject plus had plus the past participle, which is the third form of the verb. For example, I had already done my homework before we started the lesson. And we use the past perfect to talk about the past before the past. So usually we have some past event, like in the example when we started the lesson, and we are expressing what had happened before this past event. So this tense isn't as common as some of the other tenses, but it is a nice descriptive way of specifying that you do mean the past before the past. A good example is when I got my puppy Sarah, the first time I left her at home. When I came home, I discovered that she had done some bad stuff. So I could say, when I got home, I found out my dog Sarah had peed all over the floor. She had chewed my shoes. She had destroyed all of her toys. And the next tense is the present perfect tense. And the form of this tense is subject plus have plus the past participle, which is the third form of the verb again. Now I do have a specialized video that I made specifically for the present perfect tense because it is a tense that many of my students have problems with. You can watch that video here right now if you'd like, but I'm just going to briefly explain what we use this tense for. So the present perfect tense has two main uses. One of the uses is to explain something that happened in the past but happened in unfinished time. For example, I have done my homework this week, or I have done my homework today. This means I've completed my homework, but I've done it in an unfinished time period, like this week or today. Other examples of unfinished time are this year, or my lifetime, or using words like recently and lately. This is contrasted to finished time, which I talked about when we did the past simple. So when you talk about something that happened in finished time, use the past simple. And when you talk about something that happened in unfinished time, use the present perfect. And the second main use of the present perfect is to describe an unfinished action or activity. For example, I have lived in Prague for 7 years, or I have taught you for 3 months, or I have never done a skydive. I really want to for some reason. So maybe you can already see these perfect tenses follow a bit of a pattern. The past perfect describes what happened before a past event. The present perfect describes what happened before now. And now as we move on to the future perfect, this describes what happened before a future time. So the form of the future perfect is the subject plus will plus have plus the past participle, which is the third form of the verb again. For example, I will have finished my homework by next lesson. So you have the future time, next lesson, and what will have been completed by that time. So this tense is often used for deadlines or to express what you will have done by a certain point in the future. So maybe your boss asks you, when will you have finished the report by? And you might say, sorry, I've been busy, but I will have finished it by the end of the day. So just an overview of the perfect tenses again. You have the past perfect. I had done my homework before we started the lesson. The present perfect. I have done my homework. And the future perfect. I will have finished my homework by next lesson. And for the final category of tenses, we have the perfect continuous tenses. These are probably the most difficult, but probably the least used. So the importance of these tenses depends on the level that you're at. If you're just a beginner or an intermediate level, you don't have to worry too much about these tenses right now. But if you're an upper intermediate or an advanced level, you should definitely start using these tenses in your language and your vocabulary. So we'll start with the past perfect continuous. And the form of this tense is subject plus had plus been plus verbing. Like, I had been doing my homework for 2 hours when the lesson started. So the past perfect continuous is very similar to the past perfect. It describes what had been happening before a past event. However, with the past perfect continuous, it describes a continuous action that had been happening up until this past event and was still happening at this past event or had just stopped. So in the example we used, when the lesson started, I had been doing my homework for 2 hours up until that point, and I either stopped right then or I continued doing it. Another example could be, I hadn't been sleeping for long enough when my alarm clock went off. I'm sure we've all experienced this before. Your alarm clock goes off and you wake up and you're really tired because you hadn't been sleeping enough up until that point. And the next tense is the present perfect continuous tense. And the form of this tense is subject plus have plus been plus verbing. And again, this is very similar to the present perfect tense, but the present perfect continuous tense focuses on what has been happening up until the present and has just stopped or is continuing. For example, I have been doing my homework for an hour, and that would mean I am still doing it or I have just stopped. Or currently, I have been teaching you for about 20 minutes and I am still teaching you. So the key difference to understand here between the present perfect continuous and the present perfect is that the present perfect continuous focuses more on the continuous activity still happening, whereas the present perfect focuses more on the completion of an activity in the unfinished time up until now. And the final tense in this category is the future perfect continuous. And the form of this is subject plus will plus have plus been plus verbing. Now I know that sounds very complicated, but it follows the same principles as the other two tenses in this category. An example is, I will have been doing my homework for ages when the lesson finally starts. So here you're expressing something that will have been happening right up to a certain point in the future and will still be happening then or will just finish. Or I can say, I will have been teaching English for 10 years at the end of this year. So again, just to sum up the perfect continuous category, you have the past perfect continuous. I had been doing my homework for a long time when the lesson started. The present perfect continuous, I have been doing my homework for a few hours before now. And the future perfect continuous, I will have been doing my homework for a long time when the lesson finally starts. So there you have it. That's all of the 12 tenses. I know that's a lot to take in. So just as a quick review of these categories of tenses, we have the simple tenses. Now all of these simple tenses mean something a little bit different, but they're quite easy to use. As we said, the past simple, something that happened at a certain point in the past. The present simple, something that happens regularly, or a habit or a general truth. And the future simple, something we think will happen, or an immediate decision, or a promise, or an offer. And for the continuous tenses, now there's lots of similarities between these three tenses. You have the past continuous, continuous action happening at a certain point in the past. The present continuous, a continuous action happening right now, this certain point. And the future continuous, a continuous action or activity happening at a certain point in the future. So this category all follow the same pattern. The same is true for the perfect tenses. You have the past perfect, something that has happened before a certain point in the past. The present perfect, something that has happened before now in unfinished time. And the future perfect, something that will have happened before a certain point in the future. And the perfect continuous tenses also follow their own pattern. The past perfect continuous, something that had been happening right up to that certain point in the past and was still happening then or just finished. The present perfect continuous, something that has been happening right up until now and is still happening or has just finished. And the future perfect continuous, something that will have been happening right up to a certain point in the future and will still be happening then or will just finish. So as you can see, when they're written in this table and organised in a nice way, you can see the patterns that they follow. So it's not like every tense means something completely different. If you can learn how to use the present continuous, then the past and the future continuous should be easy. If you can learn how to use the present perfect, which is very important, then the past perfect and the future perfect are much easier to learn because they follow the same principles. And the same is true if you learn how to use the present perfect continuous, which is also very important. Then the past perfect continuous and the future perfect continuous become much easier to learn because they follow the same principles. Also be aware that this is a very quick lesson on 12 different tenses. In order for you to fully understand them, you have to take much longer. You have to study them more, you have to practice them, see them when you're reading or notice them, hear them when you're listening. So this lesson is meant as a quick review of these 12 tenses, and then in future lessons I intend to go through the more complicated tenses, go into more detail in how to use them properly and explain further. So don't worry if you don't understand some of the more difficult tenses just yet, but hopefully this has made it a little bit easier for you to understand them. And now, as usual, it's time for you to get involved in the lesson. It's time for my practical examples. I'm going to give you an incorrect sentence, and I'd like you to have a little think about it, maybe pause the video and think how you can correct the sentence to say it properly. So my first incorrect sentence is, I am teaching English every day. And the correct version of this sentence should be, I teach English every day. So you have to use the present simple to describe the habit. Or you could say, I am teaching English right now, if that's what you mean. My second example is, I was in Australia. So the correct answer to this should be, I have been in Australia, or I have gone to Australia. If you want to use the past simple, you have to say when. You have to use the finished time, like I was in Australia last year, or I went to Australia when I was a child. And my final incorrect sentence is, I will be due my homework tomorrow night. So obviously there was no tense there. The correct answer should be, I will be doing my homework tomorrow night. You could say this in other ways. You could say, I am going to do my homework tomorrow night if it's a plan, or I am doing my homework tomorrow night, because you can use the present continuous for future plans. There are often many different ways to refer to the future in English, and as you become more advanced and learn more of these ways, each one can specify something a little bit different. Feel free to watch the video over and over if it was too quick for you. I know this is a difficult lesson, there's a lot to take in, but hopefully this has helped you a lot. Please can I ask you, if you like the video, to like it and subscribe to my channel. It's really important for me in order to help the channel grow and for me to keep making these videos for you. Thank you. Cheers.